So I have finished painting my character, and I've added all the elements that I wanted to add to him, and I've basically done all my shading and coloring. And I actually saved this in a different program, but what I want to make sure that you guys know how to do, and I'll go ahead over here, is we're going to assume that you have this all open in several layers. All right, so all your colors and all the other things that you did for the shirt, the pants, and everything else, that should all be in several layers at this point. So the first thing we need to do to sort of prepare this for a background is we need to go ahead and compress all these layers into one. So to do that, what we do is we hold down the Control key, Shift, and then we tap the letter E for everything. If everything is set up properly on that, that would mean that all the layers now compress down into one layer. Now, next thing we want to do is we want to get rid of this background. All right, we want to eliminate all that background since it's all just part of our work. You can just throw that right in the trash. So to do that over there, we're going to go over to our toolbar and we're going to find our magic wand tool. Now, I mentioned in an earlier video how to use the magic wand tool and adjust the tolerance so it selects just the right amount of things. So, you know, if you have a background that's still a piece of paper and you have a lot of, let's say, grayscale and things like that, you could adjust your magic wand up or down to select more or less of it. Since mine is all one solid color, it actually doesn't matter for me. I'm just going to use it on whatever tolerance it's at. And hit delete or backspace, whatever you have on your keyboard. Once you've done that, you should see your character and just this checkerboard design around them. That checkerboard means that it's clear and there's nothing out there. I'm going to press Control and then the letter D to deselect. Now, to set up for this next part, what I want to do is I kind of want to make sure that I have an area to work with because we're going to make this a comic book cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my crop tool. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is go to fixed size. And what we want to do here is we want to adjust this, and I think a safe number to adjust this is we're going to make the top one, instead of 100, we're going to make it 1000. I'm sorry. The height we're going to make 1000, and the width we're going to make 750. And then we're going to move this so that that box is big enough to fit our character. We might want to make the box even a little bit bigger so that there's some space around our character. So width is going to be 750, the height will be 1000, and then we'll hit enter or return. What should happen then is that it should recrop your picture and it should give you just a little bit extra space around it. If you want to grab the move tool, you can always grab the move tool and then move your character around. That's totally fine. But when we're using the crop tool, we want to use the crop tool with fixed size. Width is 750, height is 1000. Now we want to find a picture for our background. I've already gone to Google and found a picture that I liked. I've saved that. So all I have to do in Photopea is find it. I'll go File, Open, and I'll grab that photo. I'll hit Open. Now what I want to do for this photo is I want to select all of it. So selecting all is to hold down the Control key and pressing the letter A. What you should see right now is a dotted line box around it. If you happen to have this view of it, that means you're still in the crop tool. Just switch off the crop tool. That dotted line means it's selected. I'll go ahead and Control C to copy it. I'll go back to my project and hit Control V to paste. When I paste it, it might paste either really big like this or really small. In whatever case, it's going to paste on top of your picture. So if you go down to your layer window, you're going to see your character and the background. All you have to do is click on the character layer or the background layer and just drag one above the other. Now what I might want to do is sort of readjust these things. I'm going to see, I don't like the way it fits on my background, so I'm going to grab my move tool. I'm going to try to move the background a little bit. What I can also do is I can resize the background. To resize the background, I want to make sure that I'm on layer 5, or the layer that it's posted on. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and Scale. What you should see is this boundary box. And if that pops up, you can go ahead and readjust your picture. You can kind of stretch it out if you need to and fix it so that your character fits on it the way you want. When you have it the way you want, and I think I almost have it the way I want, you can hit Enter. If you decide at this point that you want to change the size of your character as well, you do the same thing here. Edit, Transform, and Scale. But if you don't hold down the Shift key, you can make them really sort of distorted. So while you're doing this, you should hold down the Shift key and then adjust how you want your character. When you have it the size you want it, you can hit Enter once again. So now you've placed it. Now you have your character in their background. Again, Control plus and Control minus will zoom in, zoom out. Control 0 make it full screen. What I would recommend to you is to save your work at this point, just so you don't lose it. As always, I'll save as a PSD. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to mess around a little bit with the text tool. And I want to see how the text tool works. So the text tool is the letter T on your toolbar, and we'll select it for the type tool. Now the type tool options pop up over here. You see the name of the font, the style of the font. There's regular, for some there's italic, there's bold. You see the size, and these are in pixels, so you might have to adjust how big that size is over here. And this color box is going to be the color of the font. Just like a color picker, you can click in there and adjust that color. Over here is left, center, and right adjust. I recommend you change it to center. I recommend you pick a color. And then to start, what I would do is I would just click right on your picture. You should get a cursor. So I am going to start typing. And the issue here is that my font is way too big. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to go to the size, and I'll kind of mess around with that. Now, while you're still in the font type tool option, you'll notice if you mouse over the word, you have the regular sort of type cursor. But if you go off the word, you'll see this plus with the arrows on the ends of it. If you click and drag, you can move your font wherever you want. And we can also use the cursors here to kind of make it bigger or smaller. I'm going to go ahead and move it around a little bit and get it the way I want. Now, with the type tool, what I would tell you to do is you can highlight this, and while you're highlighted, we can make some other adjustments. First things to do, I'll go to my fonts and I'll click my drop-down box. You can see the different types of fonts. The names of the fonts are there, and it shows you a little preview of what they look like. What you can do is click, and as it changes, you can see it change on the screen. Take a look at what that looks like. To get out of this, I would just click on it and I'll see. And what I'll do is, let me make my font a different color right now so you can see it a little bit better. Let's see what that looks like. Hey. Alright, so I'm going to play around a little bit until I find a font I really like. Can try out a bunch of different ones. Alright, for the sake of moving this along, I'll settle on this for right now, but I can always go back and change it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and find a color that I like a little bit better. I'll go with that yellow. Now, the issue that I'm having over here is that that color doesn't really stand up nicely off my background. Alright, so what I'm going to do to kind of fix that is I'm going to start opening up an option called the layer options. And that's by going to the layer that the type tool is on, and I'm going to double click on the empty space on that gray box. When the layer style pops up, you're going to see a lot of these different options, and next to them are going to be those options sort of adjustments. So I'm going to show you a couple different ones. You don't have to use all of these, but you can go in there and see how they work. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to stroke. When I click on stroke right away, you notice that now there's a black outline around my word. That color is controlled right inside here on the strokes. And you see when I'm highlighted, you can see I've checked the box stroke, and now over here I have some options. I can go over here and adjust that color to whatever color I like, to whatever color I think fits. And I think I like the red outline on it right now. I'm going to hit OK. The size will adjust over here. You can make that outline very, very thick or somewhat thinner. I think for the sake of seeing this well, I'm going to make it just a little bit thicker. I'm going to adjust my color a little bit darker. Yeah. And once I like that, I'm going to leave that alone. Go ahead, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see some of these options on the letters a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and click again on my effects window on the layer style. And I've done the stroke. Now what I want to try to do, I'm going to try bevel and emboss. So I'm going to click that and see what happens. When you click on bevel and emboss and highlight it, you're going to see all of a sudden these sort of shadows have come in. If you click and highlight that layer, you can see the options on that pop up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start messing around with some of those options. Let's see, we can create like a shadowed version. We can create a kind of depth effect. We can kind of change the adjustment of that. Go to the opacity of it. And that'll make it lighter or darker. I think I like that little effect. I'm going to try it in a couple in the outer bevel. And that outer bevel is actually on the red. You can see right now. You'll notice when I change it for the inner bevel. You can change it to emboss. You can see it's slightly adjusted. That effect. Pillow emboss. And stroke emboss. I think I like the emboss level the best. And I could kind of play around with those effects, and you can see how it gives the letters a little bit more of a three-dimensional feel. Try some of these other ones like drop shadow, like adding a drop shadow. You kind of put a shadow behind the letter and make it sort of pop out a little bit more. You can adjust how dark that shadow is, or how light, how far away it is from the actual word, the size of it. Yeah. We can also try pattern overlays. Pattern overlays will add that sort of texture around there, and you can see there are different patterns you could choose from. We'll go ahead and try polka dots and random sort of other ones. I think I'm not crazy about the pattern overlay, so I'm gonna just undo that. You can go with the color overlay, and in color overlay, that'll give you the opportunity to kind of change the whole color of what you made. So if you want to try it in a different sort of look and a different view from what you already picked, that's one way to change the color. Okay, and I'm gonna undo that real quick. You have satin. Satin adds that extra little element of shading to it. When I like it, I'll sort of leave it, lighten it up a little bit, and maybe adjust the size of it. And when I hit OK, you can see what it looks like on my actual screen. The other thing about layer effects are, if you decide afterwards, like tomorrow, you don't like it, you can always go back to that layer and you can see the EFF there. Double click on it and you can say, well, I don't want the satin anymore, I'll undo that. And maybe I want to see what it looks like without the stroke now. It kind of needs it. Maybe I don't want the bevel emboss anymore. So you can go back and change those and adjust those. So what you want to do is you want to play around and kind of get your character on a background, and then maybe open up the type tool and try a couple different options. Another thing that you might want to keep in mind is to create a nice effect of depth. Since this looks like it's popping up off the screen, if I reposition my character so that layer is above that one, see his foot will now come out in front of the lettering. Might create the effect that it looks like he's kind of really just flying off the page. As always, I'll go ahead and save this. I know that I've given you a lot of different options here as far as how to do stuff with the text. You can also go back with your type tool and even highlight what you've already typed and try it in different fonts and see what it looks like. In this case, I probably have to make it just a little smaller. But if you work with the text, the layer options, what you'll find is that you can make these adjustments as you want and then see how they look like in different fonts. So that's our demo for today on adding the background and working with the type tool. Tomorrow or maybe the next day I'll show you how to add some more cool elements to your comic book cover.